There are, if we will be talking, I don't like competing with people at the tables. I will go record this and they will send it to you. Okay? There was a church that had a school. And this church also had a coach. Each time people came, then the coach was a man, and he was coaching girls' team. And when they will come for a timeout, he will be high-fiving everyone, and then guess what? He was giving them a slap on the behind. Until one day, there was a man who was part of the school board, showed up, and he looked at what was happening. He approached the coach. He said, "What is that I saw?" And the guy goes, "What? Because I'm giving a little slap on the girls?" That's a sign of encouragement. We do that in sport. But that man did not stop. He went, and when they had a board meeting, he brought it up. All of them say, "Well, we don't see anything wrong with it. This is someone we know very well among ourselves. He's good." But someone else in the group joined this man. And they investigated. And guess what? This well-beloved coach that everyone say he's good, he can't do anything. The girls came up and they say, yes, he has always made sexual advances with all of them. And he has been doing that for a long time. They have not said anything because he tells them, if you say anything, I kick you out of the team. You know, young people don't know better. They want to be in a team. They're looking for that. But it took that board member to see that something was wrong, and he approached the people. That's why, actually, this is not the teaching. I'm going to just tell you facts that are out there. We are required to give this training. And actually, at my work, I make all my staff do that every year. We don't talk about the church, but within our own organization. Now, I know that some of you are also experts. And I'm going to tell my two stories at the beginning, that way they are out. And then the next 20 minutes, hopefully, I give you what I need to give. There was someone who wanted to become actually a Zen master. And this person happened to be a university professor. And when he went to the Zen master, he said, I want to learn how to be a master. Can you teach me? The Zen master took actually a tea, what you call a teapot, okay, and brought him a cup. And he put it like Canon Goldman is there, put it there, he's pouring really hot tea. It's already full, it started spilling over. And this man, within a culture that does not correct the teacher, even if he is wrong, you do not tell the teacher he is wrong. So this one is looking that the cup is already full, the master keeps pouring, and actually where Canon Goodman is, the tea starts spilling out of the table until when it burned him. And he says at this point, I can't hold, he's gonna keep burning me. And he spoke up and said, Master, I think the cup is full. And the guy said, finally, he stopped pouring the cup in. And he said, you come to me so you can learn about how to be a Zen master. The problem is that you're coming with on your own assumptions. You are already full of opinions. You are full of your own assumptions. How can I teach you something when it will only bounce off? Go back, empty yourself, and come back, then I can teach you. See, that says many of you will be good experts when I'm going here. You might have opinions. You might have assumptions. just empty yourself a little bit and let us see what this presentation is about. The purpose is not really to turn you into students, but here it is. We want to explain what child abuse does have, that it does happen, not only in other places, but in our churches. And the consequences of it when it happens, they're bad, very bad. We also want to make sure that we understand what are the different types of abuses that children can face, but not only children, but the people, even older people who are vulnerable. We want to make sure that we can spot the signs and symptoms of something that is happening, because everyone who is sitting here, you know that you are a mandatory reporter. And it's important to understand what you are reporting. We want to identify areas of vulnerability within the church ministries and all the programs that we run, because that's where the risk is high. And finally, we can outline all the risk of reducing really the potential of having abuses. So we'll have some procedures that will be explained to all of us. But before I start, I want to pray for children. This is not my prayer. As you see, I gave you a reference in there. Some lady, right Edelman, has written, "Guide my feet, prayers and meditations on loving and working for children." So this prayer is an adaptation from that long prayer. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for the gift of children to raise, for their lives to share, their minds to help mold, their bodies to nurture, and their spirit to enrich. Let us never betray our children's trust or dampen their hope or discourage their dreams. Help us to enable our precious children to become all you want them to be for the journey ahead. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. So what is abuse? Abuse generally does happen in many forms. It could happen at the same time. It can be happening in different times. But they have many types of abuses, which is, for example, criminal abuse. And that's, you have to check each state, how do they define it? Even though we live, there is not a federal definition of the criminal abuse, but each state does define it its way. But we can deal with emotional abuse, which basically does make children feel like they are just worthless, they have no value, and it can be expressed in many ways. And so we attack their emotional way of dealing with things. There is what we call sexual abuse, and this will be actually the only focus of my talk. The other one, I'm giving you the names, but this talk will be about sexual abuse, not anything else. You have also physical abuse, that's clear to everyone. It's inflicting physical pain to a child or to someone who is vulnerable, and you can view that. There's also something that is neglect. If you own a pet, you know also that you can know what the neglect is. Not giving food, not leaving water, basically abandoning a child, walk in the cold water without proper clothing. Those are some of those categories that can fall into what is that we can call abuse. As much as I can talk about those, my focus is not on that. As I said, we want to concentrate only on sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse. Let me read that, and I will give you another definition that is long, that the World Health Organization has given. But this is quickly, it says, is the non-consensual sexual contact between child and adult, minor and minor or adults, such as fondling, intercourse, incest, pornographic exploitation or exposure. The length goes on. I want to emphasize the word non-consensual. And that's really very problematic. Many people think they did have consent from someone, when in reality, consent becomes very complicated. Because if you have lied to someone, and they still did what you told them, there is no free consent. Someone who acts because you lied to them, and they have no other way of finding out that this is a lie, and they acted down the road, it can be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if they find that you did lie to them, they did not consent. Coercion is another one. Coercing someone, I think now people talk about grooming, and you do that, and they act out of people trusting you when you're coercing them. There is no consent. And that one I can tell you, even just adults. Because that's what you hear usually, well, she's a consenting adult, he's a consenting adult. Be careful if we have to talk about just the issue of consent, my bishop, that will come another time. But I wanted to make clear, be careful with what they call consent, because many people might not be consenting to you. Brainwashing people also. They're not consenting to you. Okay? Here is actually a definition that is from the World Health Organization, and listen carefully. Child sexual abuse is the involvement of a child in a sexual activity that he or she does not fully comprehend. See, all of a sudden here, they're not even understanding what they are doing. How many times have you seen children playing some chess, and they tell you I'm playing chess, and they don't even know what they're doing, other than just moving those pieces? They're playing, but do they comprehend it? Do they understand the rules? Okay. It is also something that is unable, when the child is unable to give informed consent to, or for which the child is not developmentally prepared and cannot give consent. They're not in the lifespan, and they've not reached yet that stage of development to understand things. And you're going and saying, well, they agree to it. They cannot give consent, or anything that violates the laws or social taboos of that society. You live in Texas, for example, for us, make sure you understand the laws of Texas. You're dealing with some people, even within our subcultures. Make sure that you understand really what is not permitted in those cultures. Don't always go with what is permitted, because sometimes perversion can be permitted in some cultures. Okay. Listen to what is not permitted. Child sexual abuse is evidenced by this activity between a child and an adult or another child who by age or development is in a relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. The age or the development is in relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. That can be people in the church. You have actually those who are in high school taking care of middle school or the lower one. Even though they're underage, there's already a difference that is established there, and someone will go after them. They can't say these are just children. Okay. And it continues by saying the activity being intended to gratify or satisfy the needs of the other person. This may include, but not limited to, inducement or coercion of a child to engage in any unlawful sexual activity. We as a church, we can also say unethical activity. Not only lawful, but unethical. See, if you can't think of, if I did this, will it be morally acceptable? And then not only that, for us in the church, you can add the word always. Will it always be justifiable for us to carry out what we do? which means that really it takes a lot for you to go and do things to gratify yourself. This may not include the inducement or coercion of a child to engage in any unlawful sexual activity, the exploitative use of a child in prostitution or other unlawful sexual practices, and the exploitation of children in pornographic performances and material. You're so cute. You have nice body. Can we take a picture of you? Can we do those things? You see, children are basically programmed. They are affirming me. It makes me feel good. And I hear that actually even with adults. When I'm in a classroom discussing things, well, if I have this body and it's myself doing that, hear those justifications. They don't know that someone has brainwashed them so that I can use you for what? For my own gratification. And we don't know how to spot that. But at least the World Health Organization has seen that. So in the church, we'll also talk about who is a worker. Anyone who works for the church in this category, it can be that you are in a Sunday school. All you do is you're a chaperone. All you do is you checking different things. So it can be Sunday school, VBS, church camps. It can be a church-sponsored school. No matter who you hire, these people will follow that. When you have overnight activities, and it is organized under the church, you need to make sure that we actually dealing with workers. When you are counseling minors, when you are actually in one-on-one mentoring capacity, the list is not just limited to that, it is beyond what you can have. Why am I talking about this? Because really there is a reality we need to face, all of us. On average, the abuser has an average of 200 to 400 victims before they are caught in the environment of church. Okay. These are not my statistics. I have sources that I gave to you at the end of this PowerPoint. The vast majority of offenders do not get caught because normally no one has ever filed what? Criminal record. I will give a recommendation about how you have to always make sure that you are checking what we call them, criminal background check. Well, if I'm actually one of those, catch me if you can, and you have not caught me, where are you going to find a criminal record on me? And also, if in our own groups, for example, people have learned we are to forgive, we cannot really report this because of self-preservation. It will make our church look bad, but they're going to be talking about this. Why? That's why you should not do it in the first place. So we do not report these people, and when you go into criminal background check, guess what you will have? Nothing. The offender keeps escaping. The FBI claims that 9 out of 10 victims of sexual abuse do not even report it. Like the school that I told you, the coach has been doing that for a long time until it took actually a school board to notice that and keep pushing, not really say, he's a good guy. Okay? Relying on just background checks does fall short because you might never see what is happening. Who abuses people? They range basically from age 8, even 80. Actually now we can even extend that. They come from all the backgrounds. They look like the people I told you when I showed who is Hispanic. They're all in there, ourselves included. Even the law enforcement people, you know that they actually can turn into being the abusers, and these are the ones you might not catch the most because they hiding the information. They know how to conceal that. So we cannot sit and say, well, we don't do it. It's all of the places. There is basically, when you look at the profile, it seems similar to the general population. Okay. Okay? They're not different. Do you think that it's only people who are not married or people who do that? No. Actually, I hear a lot when people talk about the abuses that have happened in the Catholic Church. People say, that's why they should let them get married. I say, oh, no, you're dealing with a different thing. Pedophilia has nothing to do with celibacy. You can have a married person who is a serial pedophile. So it is not just to one group. On average, 70 allegations of child abuse are reported in churches each week. Did you know that? Yeah. 70 allegations of church abuse. And this is basically according to Christianity Today. And it's all denominations. It's all denominations. So if we move into basically who are the victims of sexual abuse, according to research, it says that the Center for Disease Control does estimate that approximately 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18. almost 36% of sexual assault occur when the victim is between the ages of 12 and 17. And 80% of all juvenile victims are female. It's easy to coerce them. It's easy to lie to them because they get the idea of feel good when actually you grooming them. Those who commit sexual abuse, they start 90% of those perpetrators of sexual abuse are known to the child. They're not different. These are the ones who come in and they sit and they basically buy them gifts, or they know Uncle so and so. You have put yourself in there and you gain the trust of these people. It can be the teacher, it can be the coach. You have seen it in the world of sports. That's all they talk about, but yet it's happening in our homes, it's happening in our churches, it's happening in our environments. So it's not really like people who are total strangers. See that? That's a high percentage. 90%. They are well known. And that's where we as church people fall into. We know Canon Goodman. He's a good person, and we don't have to worry about him. And so we basically, we end up basically having a blind eye to what he's doing, and by the time we find out that this has been really an abuser, he has reached 400 people already. See? And basically for child abuse or neglect, about 77% does happen to all these people. Family members account, you hear that? Who is it? Family member, 30%. That's actually a big percentage. You might be thinking, oh, it's not big, but that's a big percent. From family members, those aunties, those cousins, the uncles, we don't even know. 60% of sexual abuse is committed by someone known to the child, but is not a family member. See that? We're getting our 30% family members. 60%, they know them, but they're not really part of your family. It's your friends. They come in and they actually build their trust, and there you are. Only 10% of abusers are strangers. Is that worrying you? Or maybe is it ringing the bell that something needs to happen? Okay. We have an obligation to protect the people when we know that, as a church. We are an institution, and I'm going to be mixing my slides here. I don't know if I get to it on something that I already said, I will skip it. But the church is an institution that is built on trust. And people always come and they trusting that this thing cannot happen in the church. People will come to us with so much confidence and approaching you and laying out their life. But we, as people trust, we have also an obligation to protect them. So as a church, we are to protect children, birth through age 12. They're very vulnerable. We are to protect the youth, 13 to 18. We have to protect those who work for the church, our board, our trustees, and everyone else. Mostly our bishops. Earlier I was having lunch with another group of bishops, and that's one of the things that we're saying, that they deal with some priests who are not willing to, they want to be part of a diocese, but they don't want to be told anything. They just want to live on their own. Those are the ones we call them what? Congregationalists. You wonder, why did you choose to become an Anglican? Did you know what it is? But when they are faced with a lawsuit, guess where they're going to go? Lawyers love to have multiple levels of lawsuits. They will not sue me as a person. They will go sue Epiphany, but they will also say Epiphany is part of what diocese? All nations. Those lawsuits will go together. And they will collect the money. I think we have our chancellors, we have legal advisors in this diocese. Ask them if I'm telling a lie. They will not settle with one single lawsuit. So if you have the mentality of being a congregationalist, that I don't owe anything to anyone other than myself and my church, maybe for us you need to start thinking, and that's for clergy. And because we are in a diocese and in an organization and denomination that does allow married people, that concerns also all our spouses. Do not lead your husband to just become, we are our church. By default, we just ended up being in a diocese. Those things are to be understood, not to become a liability to the diocese. No matter what you do, we have to protect. That's why we protect the trustees and other church leaders. That's why we're giving you this training, so you know that. Because hopefully, if you mess up, the bishop can record this, that on October what? 13th, in El Paso, at the garden thing. This is what we presented to all of them. He can pull this out and let you hanging out there. Yeah. So that's why it's important. You are a worker for the church. We have trustees, and that, believe it or not, all the nights who were meeting there, you are also concerned. Everyone. We do work for the church. We need to protect the adults who are not able to defend themselves, but also those who don't have a sense of maturity, that they can easily be swayed by what we have to do. You don't have to convince people to do things that they are not willing to do. If you hear someone tell you no, you know that word? It's only 3 letters, right? For some people. No, it's not. 2. N-O. Don't go try to add something else. I didn't hear no, I heard like something else. When they told you N-O, that's it. Do not try to convince them otherwise, and it's not gonna be good. We need also to know who actually are we serving. Basically, we have people who serve in our nurseries. Those are the ones taking care of the children. We have people who are serving as youth ministers. We have people who are serving, maybe just even if your church has transportation, all they do is pick up people from one place to another. The list can go on and on. You can have people who say, we are part of St. Francis and we do visitations at the hospital. Once you have said that, St. Francis becomes liable with what you can do. Okay? So anything you name that I'm doing this as part of, you have included our church in everything that you're doing. So these are the things that we do. Let me see if there are anything. Many people say we are a church. We are not at risk. Why will we basically be talking about this? Actually, churches are the ground for sexual abuse. We are an institution of trust. We don't know always the facts because no one takes time to research, and we assume that because we haven't seen anything, this is what is happening, so we don't have that problem at our church. We provide easy access to our children and youth. Do anyone has actually an objection to that? Children find it easy to be in a group with other children and with other youth. They might not necessarily like what you're doing. When I was in high school, I really went to church, not really that I enjoyed loving God. You know what was taking me much to church? The girls. That's where we were actually free. In our culture, you don't bring your girlfriend in front of your parents and you start kissing and tell, this is my boyfriend, girlfriend. And that's the adjustment I will have to make for my own kids because they're going to be dragging their friend and they're kissing in front of me. In my culture, you don't do that. You hide. Yeah, you hide. You feeling that hopefully no one will catch us here. Now, you will have many people like that. They will go and they're coming to church and they're feeling your church and they're just raising their hand, everything, but their mind is, when can we finish this service so I can just go spend time with my girlfriend or boyfriend. Hopefully that's what is true for our children. Girlfriend finding a boyfriend finding a girlfriend, not really a Stephen and Adam and Stephen. It's a challenge we will have to be facing, all of us. But they come. They will be there. And the church does that, which makes us also high risk for anything that we have to do. I'm going to move forward. People have asked that's why I put it, can child abuse really happen in church? But now, don't just talk about church in general. In your church. Think about that. Can it happen in your church? Good Shepherd in Austin. You might have everything. Do you think that can happen? Epiphany in San Antonio, do you think it can happen? Actually, any church, it does happen. Okay? You know why we don't do that? It's because we have this idea. No, it's not going to happen at our church. Our kids love each other. The parents who are there love each other. We know each other. What did I tell you? The most abuse happened with who? Okay. Those who know the child. And you need to make sure that if you look at the news, you find out that it does happen. It is really important for us to talk about sexual abuse because we are workers of the church and we are also mandatory reporters to protect those who are coming to us. And so we all have a way of dealing with that. Many insurances, if you're really dealing with insurance, they're not going to insure you if you don't have a child protection policy now. They will refuse to protect you. They're requiring that because they know that churches can actually experience those things. There is also this mentality of entitlement in our society. You did nothing and all of a sudden someone they're looking for where I can get money. They're looking for who can have the money. Even when I step up in a classroom, I'm always scared to many things that I have to make sure what I'm saying, that they will not turn around and then they will sue that university. And that's why I ask always people, did you understand what I said? And I tell them, I do have an accent, and don't blame it on my accent. Love my accent, but don't blame it that I did not understand you because of your accent. I gave you the chance to ask for clarification, and if you did not ask that, it's not something you need to tell me. Okay. So the same thing, many of us here in our churches, we are ministering to people who are not always speaking like you. And even when you have the best English, someone who does not understand English well can turn, I did not know what you were saying. So be aware of those things. In a lawsuit, basically the church is considered negligent. Even when it is just me, the diocese will be considered negligent. Because did you teach those people the right way? Okay? The last 3 months in San Antonio, 3 Roman Catholic priests have been arrested. And the last one was just last month. The first 2 within 2 weeks. And they ended up being friends. They were abusing underage girls. The third one, guess what? Was abusing a 75-year-old woman. A 42-year-old abusing 75-year-old woman in his parish. One was originally from Mexico. The other one from here. And the third one from Kenya. All of them now are sitting in jail. For all of us who are wearing these colors, that's something you can see. And the Catholic Church in the last few years, since the 1950s, they have paid $3 billion to settle lawsuits. $3 billion. Can you imagine what you can do if you use the wisdom and what the church could do with those billions? The Southern Baptists in 2019, they met in Alabama, and they were addressing the issue of sexual abuse within the church. Unfortunately, after they finished that convention and facing all the realities they have, do you think that the Southern Baptists came back with a resolution on what to do? No. They went back and they said each congregation to implement what they want. Then what's the waste of time of getting together to come see, look, all of us glorified abusers? So those are things that we need to see. The Lutheran Church actually in 2004 ended up paying 69 million for sexual abuse. Only God knows how much they have paid for now. Okay. There was also, and I picked up these numbers that are high. In Tennessee, the United Methodist Conference did settle for another lawsuit, $3 million for 2 victims. It's only 2, $3 million. So you can be one of those, and the numbers basically continue. Let me just rush toward the end. Why do we have to do this? Why is this required for us? Because our role is to provide safety first, no matter where we are. Safety in everything. We are very good to make sure that no one will sleep on our floor. We have all these handicap accessible. But where we are not, we do not provide a safe environment for everyone else. We can provide for the physical handicaps and other things, but yet we do not know how to provide prevention and safety for sexual abuse. Okay, we have to do. We support workers in case of false allegation. That's why we get insurances for each church. I'm hoping that you do. Because they will not sue you, they will sue the church. And it doesn't mean that every allegation that comes in is true. But we have an obligation to investigate. and we will defend you to the end if we know that this is not true. But the most is the loss of reputation. What you can do in one church, they will talk about the Diocese of All Nations. And even other people we have in ACNA, they will love to actually seize that opportunity to tell everyone else, look at that diocese. They have abuses. And we lose reputation with that. And your own church will lose reputation. You lose a lot of money. Then what do you have to do? Every church, don't wait for the bishop to do that. In your own church, in your local churches, implement policies that are dealing with sexual abuse. If you don't know how to draft that, you can write something, send it to our chancellors. Isn't it why we have them? For them to basically look at where you're writing something that might incriminate you, or where you are underwriting something that is not very clear. Draft something. There is something that most people deal with. 2 adult rule. I'll tell you, don't follow that much. What if your 2 adults are both abuses? Have you ever asked yourself that? So I will tell you that for me, at Epiphany, I have a 3 adult rule. So that if 2 are in cahoot, hopefully the 3rd one will not follow suit. Okay? The 2 adult rule, you will hear that from everyone, but I'm going to tell you that try to implement that. Go with 3 adults at least. You need to have an annual orientation training. That's why also the diocese tells us each time we get somewhere, let's review these things that people seem to know. So we do that again. Next year you will hear it again. Okay? 5-year-old rule and none other than 18. Well, there is an issue with that too. And there is another rule that you will see, that you have to have the 6-month rule when someone comes to your church first, and they need to be there for 6 months, and then after that you can give them responsibilities. Guess what? Abusers have learned all these tricks. They sit in these conferences. They hear what churches are looking. And if I'm evil intent, I develop patience. I'm going to sit there until I hit my 6-month rule. And then after that, they gave me access to everyone. See that? So yes, 6 months, maybe before you let them read, but in child abuse, there is no such thing. It is every day that you're monitoring them when they are as worker of your church. And put that in writing, because what is not written does not exist. Okay? Have windows in classroom, doors and open doors. Well, we all know that. But how many times will you be if there is no one roaming the hallways? You're the only one in that church, and you know, okay, all the windows are open. That does not still, it's good, but you need to do beyond what is a minimum requirement to secure your church. So we need to teach our parents as well. We cannot just give an education to church workers, but you have to have moments that you're teaching your church about these things, where the parents are invited and you're teaching them as you would do on a Sunday school or anything else. Just dedicate that into sexual abuse teaching. You can do that quarterly. But do not just rely on anything else. Always, like always, you have to make sure that these people have been explained things to and have them sign that you did teach them. Okay? Develop a written policy that is clearly stating what you have to do. Avoid, in philosophy we say that the problem can happen if they are actually ambiguation. And you know how people ambiguate stuff? It's by, this is a fancy word, it's what we call obfuscation. Obfuscation. You write stuff and you using words that have different meanings. And it's open to interpretation. So disambiguate your terms. You saw when I started, I gave definitions of what we're talking about. And that way, no one will take something else. When you have that policy, reinforce it. Many people write it and that's it, and then people don't know it. You are obligated to enforce what you set up as a policy yourself, not someone else. You can't just tell them, I gave it to you and you should have read that. Well, that will not take you anywhere. Educate the entire congregation. Don't just rely on few people. Keep using way, find way of preaching on it too. The scripture is full of really the protection of children. And we see that that's what I will conclude with. So make sure that you are doing this in new classrooms, in anything that you have. April is known actually as the Child Protection Month. You can choose that to teach people. Since we have a month for everything, okay? Give it to everyone. So we already talked about the two policy rules, but I put the ad floaters, people who are just, whose role is to walk the hallway. I tell you, when I was, one time I moved into another campus, it's at night, they wanted us to teach from 6 to 10, and by the time it was 8:30, you will see these people walking, peeking in every classroom. And I didn't know, I said, why do they do that? Well, what they were doing is that they will report to the dean that this teacher is dismissing class at 8:30 instead of 10. Well, we can borrow from that. Put floaters in your church. Volunteers who just walk around the hallway trying to see what might happen. Okay? Never let a minor drive alone. That will be complicated for many of you. Say, what is he talking about? Well, reinforce that. Don't let a minor drive alone with just one adult. Hopefully there will be some other people that they can say, we gotta pick them up and we'll take them. I do that. I get friends who say, our daughter, can you bring them? But what I do, my children are there, and that, even if my house is that I have to pass it, I'm with my children, I drop off everyone else, and we get to our home last. So create that for your own. Make sure that you do have enough ratio. You determine that, but it's always a good, don't follow the school that says 6 kids, 1 chaperone. If you have a way to add to that, just you go back to at least 2 so that they can look at them. Don't leave someone alone when they go to the bathroom. Those are things that you do. If you don't have the option of adding, cancel the activity. That's the only way you can be safe. Cancel it. Make sure that the ratio are matching always. I already talked about the 6 months, it doesn't make anything. You all know about pedophilia. Have clear way of screening your staff and constantly screening them. Background check, they're necessary, but they might escape you, but that's a starting point. So do not skip them. Do those basics, and then you add another layer, okay? Ask them to give you a statement when you talk to them. If someone says that, if I'm gonna sign a statement, I don't want to help here, tell them thank you, I will keep praying for you. Why would you run away from that policy? Yes?
I have a question before you go.
we are drafting actually a policy that will be sent to the bishop for child abuse. Apparently, I'm the chair for that. It was not finalized, and that's why I did not bring it here for the bishop to give it. But we will finalize it by mid-November, and it will be sent. I will include some forms that you can use. I will adapt forms that I use for my work, and that tweak it hopefully to fit what you will be doing. And it will come to our legal advisors who can actually make them work. Yes?
With that being said, can the diocese also have a platform for doing background checks? Because I think it'll be good to have a central place so that if somebody comes to our church and it's through the diocese, then if they go to another church, they don't have to do a whole new background. They can go to the system and see, oh, have you done a background check? And if something is flagged, they know as well. So somebody's not just church hopping.
Okay, that's a question for the table behind me to deal with. It's a good question.
That's an excellent thing, and the way our diocese works is your churches are responsible for the background checks of your volunteers. I'm glad we're drafting a policy. If you're in Civil Air Patrol, we have that rule with regard to having extra people, etc. We're using a new background check system in the diocese, and we can send that link out. What it would require is your parish administrator, they pay for the check, and it really is not a lot. It's probably, I want to say $69 for it, something like that. And they'll run it, and what they do is that candidate or volunteer you have, whoever it is, they will send them a link, including the disclosure statements and the waivers and everything else. So they sign all that documentation, and and we haven't used it yet, so we're brand new to it. We were using another company before, but I believe that at that point it clears, you will have that, so your administrator will have that. If I were getting somebody that came to me and said, you know, I was at Good Hope Church, and you know, I've moved here and I want to come work for you, I would contact Good Hope Church. And I would ask that person, was a background check done on you? And I would ask Good Hope Church and get reference material from them. Because Dr. Kakea is exactly right. Perps want to be around kids. They're going to move around, and very quick story, because of the background with investigations I have, sat in on, and it kind of surprised me, but I sat in on a group with county attorneys and all kinds of people. And they had a guy who had perpetrated at home on his daughter, and the county attorney and everybody is sitting here, and the Child Protective Services found that person reason to believe for sexual abuse. Now the way that works in the state of Texas is that is not the sex offender registry. That is reason to believe in the CPS profile. If you go to work in the school district, they'll find that. If you go to work in one of the facilities, child care facilities we regulated, or treatment centers, we'll find that. The public has no access to that. And what surprised me is they were debating it. The county and district attorney only have limited resources, and they decided they were not going to prosecute that case. There is a classic example of somebody who CPS felt there was a preponderance of evidence, which is simply, it's not a high level, it's 51%, that they had sexually abused a child. CPS has them tagged, but the law enforcement will have no conviction on that person. So by all means, run your background checks, as Dr. Kakea said. It's very important to have all these safeguards in place, and even at that, nothing's foolproof. I don't want to take more time, but I could cite examples of people who did everything right, and a perpetrator, and even had cameras, and a perpetrator managed to do it. And Dr. Kakea mentioned you have to have people trained so that if they see one of your volunteers walking off with one of the kids, they have to be brave enough to know, wait a minute, we've all been trained, that's not right. I need to go talk to the rector or whoever's in charge and let them know, hey, I just saw somebody taking somebody aside because they're grooming. But I will get that link, and Dr. Giola can send that out so that the churches have it, and you can start using it to run background checks.
Thank you. I'm going to skip many things because he touched on it. You see that require sworn statements. They volunteer, but have them sign something. And interviews, and do not do like most people. We know them, we don't need interview. No, interview them and ask for references. Always. More likely you have worked to a place where they told you we will not call your previous employer. We will not do this. Of course, if you have no desire to give them a job, don't call that employer. But if you're pursuing that candidate, I will call your former employer and I will inquire why you left them. See, those are things that you do. Unless you will not offer them the job, forget it. But if you will, you need to. Systematic supervision is required. You are required to report any suspicion. Even when you don't know what to do, that's why the executive archdeacon say, go to your rector. Now, as a rector, you investigate that. If you are not equipped on doing that, hopefully you do have people in your parish that you can trust. Not because you are the rector that you know it all. No. Actually, you become an expert when you know your parish members and who is an expert in what. Let us sit down here, let us look at the situation. Should we continue it? Should we escalate it to another level? There are some other things that you're not waiting for an archdeacon in your place to make a report. You're not waiting for the bishop. Many situations will require to grab that phone and do what?
Call CPS.
Call 911. And then you can deal with child protective services. That's what CPS is. Okay? But sometimes you call CPS, but also for the vulnerable adults, you call who? The APS. Okay? I have numbers for you toward the end. Report to authorities, basically make anything that you're dealing with. What to do is suspect a church member, you call your rector. So, who to call? One, department. I didn't finish typing that word. It's not for you to depart from it, but it's the Department of Family and Children Services in the county where you live, in the state where you are. Don't go call Louisiana if you are in Texas. Okay? Make sure that you know your state. But actually these numbers seem to be the same. 1-800-CHILDREN. If you call that, it goes directly to your city and your state. Call 1-888-774-0152 to report any suspected abuse of adults and even an exploitation. But in case of imminent danger, you need to act. Call 911 and tell them that usually they will tell you, is this a non-emergency? Tell them, no, it is an emergency. Okay? Otherwise, they will sit there for 2 hours. Why are we doing this? These are the last things that I'm going to tell you. It's because actually we are required by Scripture. If you look at it, you see that but Jesus called for them and said, let the little children come to me and do not stop them. For it is such as these that the children of God, the kingdom of God belong. Let children come. But when children came to Jesus, it was not to abuse them. They came because they were in safety. They were protected. They were nurtured. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstones hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depth of what? The sea. You're going to be turned into an anchor for a boat to sit there. And that's not a good thing. So let us not abuse children. Let us not really be the people who come and when they're seeking for safety, and we need to safeguard them. When they are seeking that trust, they earn it. You need to give it to them. Let us not continue violating the innocence of children and taking advantage of the people who do not understand yet. It is our right to teach them what is right. It is our obligation to respect their rights, even when they themselves are not understanding those rights. We do not wait for anyone else. So if you want, there are other references for my information. I will send these PowerPoints to the bishop and
Dr.